Controversial basic income grant for the poor will kill economic growth. Now, that's according to President Cyril Ramaphosa's advisors. Let's discuss this now with convener at the National Economic Development and Labour Council, NEDLAC. That's Thulani Tshefuta. Thulani, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. So, the President's Economic Advisory Panel has somewhat put the brakes on the plans for a permanent relief grant of sorts, calling for more affordability assessments. What's your take on this?
Well, thank you very much, and good afternoon, Fundo, and all the viewers of ENCA all across the country and beyond. Well, this is a very interesting development, which I think must be met with the level of interest that your media station is showing. The first thing, as our view as structures of civil society that are also represented at NEDLAC, is that anyone who come to the suggestions about the abrupt stopping of this social relief of distress grant, also known as the 350 rands grant, and its intended long-term formulation in the form of a basic income grant, anyone who comes with such suggestions is, unlike us who lead structures of civil society in communities, not alive to the reality of the stark poverty that we see in our communities, which levels of poverty are high beyond 50% of our population, which levels of poverty have a race in the form of blacks in general and Africans in particular, which poverty has gender, since women bear the brunt of the largest amounts of poverty. That poverty even has an address in the sense that largest pockets of poverty are found in townships and in rural areas. That poverty even goes beyond to have age, because young people also are the hardest hit. So any suggestions that seek to suggest that we must stop those types of grant, what their proponents are doing is to write off all the poor people in South Africa. What is even painful is the fact that in the course of COVID-19 itself, we have seen instances where businesses that are even thriving have been getting business rescue packages. Even those who are already employed as being workers have been receiving some kind of COVID-19 TERS, which has been paid through the UIF. And you come and tell us that those who do not know where their next rent is going to come from, those who have no hope of where their next income is going to come from, those who do not know where their next slice of bread is going to come from, must not be provided for.
Could we really
believe
say
that
it's them writing off the poor, or perhaps appealing to the president or government to be circumspect in their approach? Because really the concern here would be the funding model for them, that it would come at a significant cost for government. Do we have the funds currently to carry this?
Mfundo, one of the provisions of our constitution is the progressive realization of our socio-economic rights. And so interventions of this nature are empowering the citizens to live the reality of what is provided for in the constitution. Let me give you a brief history of where this grant comes from, of 350. When this grant was initially proposed by us at NEDLAC, by the way, there came a time when government from the National Treasury and Social Development and other players truly believed that there is no money to continue with this grant. It was supposed to have ended in March last year. When discussions were closed at NEDLAC, we personally wrote letters to the president and said, any move to stop this grant is inviting for disaster in this country, and it cannot be acceptable. The president was responsive. He said that government processes will be able to deal with that. Hence, today we have the extension of that grant. Secondly, on Friday, the 14th of January, we had a meeting with the president. Whilst he has already received this advice from his Presidential Economic Advisory Committee, we also advised the president in that meeting of 14 January that we are still standing for the extension of this grant, small as it is at 350, because we're looking at a bigger picture that can sustain this grant into a fully fledged basic income grant. Now, we have also argued what could be the sources of funding for this. And in some instances, we may not even need new funding. If you collect all the savings that are currently leaking through corruption, we will be saving a lot of money that can go to service the poor. When you invest money for the benefit of the poor, the mistake that our economists make is to only categorize that as a consumption expenditure without appreciating the fact that that money will not only sit in the hands of the poor, but once spent, it will have multiplier effects. Practical example is that a poor person will get the grant, they will buy bread. It means there will be increased demand for bread.
Yes.
When they were producing five loaves, they will now produce 10 loaves of bread. For you to
So it
produce
impacts
10 loaves
even
of
the
bread,
labor force here because of the aggregate demand. Yes. So macroeconomics states that they would stimulate the economy further if you gave that 350. But you have Treasury. There's clearly a disconnect that says this 350 will actually increase dependency. I'm sure you've heard that statement. So clearly there's a disconnect here when you speak of NEDLEC that has the ear of government.
it would be a case where the National Treasury is genuinely not listening to us. Because even our argument for this social relief of distress grant, even our argument for universal basic income grant goes further to say that the grant on its own is not an end. We will still need to increase investments such that we can grow our economy, which growth must create jobs. And so it is not a matter of grant or jobs, grants or growth. All those must take place at the same time.
Unfortunately, Thulani, I'm so sorry. We've run out of time for this, but certainly a very important conversation that deserves more of a broader conversation. We will actually diarize this and have that broader conversation because it's an issue that's not going anywhere. Thank you very much for your time. That's convener for the National Economic Development and Labour Council, Thulani Tshefuta.